Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Jae Encarnacion, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are thrilled to have Gerardo Gauthier-Zayas, the founder and president of Avant Consulting and Training. Gerardo brings over 20 years of experience in leadership and workforce development, a doctor of education, and a passion for empowering organizations through strategic guidance and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Based in Monson, Massachusetts, Avant Consulting, founded to drive growth and innovation, offers leadership coaching, professional development, and systemic equity solutions, including the innovative Training Entrepreneur Network. We'll be exploring his founding story, how his business transforms organizations, and his vision for scaling this impact-driven venture. So let's dive right in. Gerardo, welcome to Founders Future.
Well, thank you, Jay, very much for the invitation and that wonderful introduction. I very much appreciate it. It's humbling. And I'm looking forward to just allowing the audience to get to know me better and for us to connect in this way. So thank you very much for inviting me to connect.
Absolutely. A pleasure to have you on the show, Gerardo. Such a great background you have. So super excited to dive in for our listeners here. So with that being said, let's start at the top, right? If you could take us back to the beginning, Gerardo, what specific problem in the leadership development or DEI landscape really inspired you to start Avant Consulting?
Sure. It was about, I want to say, my whole entire career, I've always worked in the nonprofit sector, community-based organizations. And with that being said, the last time, it was about approximately 5 years ago, I was at a conference, and it was an education conference, and it was a conference very specific to Hispanic serving institutions in the United States. And here I am. This is one of my first conferences that I went to. This is before I decided to go to get my doctorate degree. So I go to this conference. I'm an administrator in higher education at that time. And so I'm excited, right? Because this is my first time being around Latinx professionals in the settings of, oh, let's talk about how we serve our students. And for those out there who don't know what a Hispanic serving institution is, or an HSI, that's just a designation designated by the government that says that the students enrolled in any organization, and they have to be certified that at least 25% of their students that are receiving education are Latinx. So that's kind of like the baseline, right? So here I am, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people coming together to really talk about how we are, how we're doing, what are the trends, how's it going for students and so forth. So within that conference, there was a sense of pride that I've always felt proud, but it was just different in a professional environment where most of the people there were Latinx. So I thought, all right, this is cool. So then I get there, and then you know how all conferences, they have your different sessions, you have your breakout sessions, you have your luncheon sessions. And so there was one particular breakout session that I went to, and it was featuring college presidents of HSIs, right? So I said, oh, this might be cool to get a perspective of what's it like to be a president, a college president at a Hispanic serving institution. So I was curious. Even though I was working at one, even though I said one day I aspire to be, right? I said, I just want to understand some of the mechanisms, right? And just listen. So I get there, and then this particular breakout session started, and there were about 4 people on the panel. And what I was surprised at is that when I was looking, there was 2 presidents, and then there was a host and someone else. But the 2 presidents were not Latinx, which I thought, oh, that's odd, right? I was like, I get it. There's not a lot of us in education that are presidents. As a matter of fact, I did research for my dissertation, and what I discovered was that from a national level, on average, there's about 17% of college presidents that self-identified as BIPOC or Black, Indigenous persons of color. So I thought, oh, that's interesting, right? But that's at 4-year colleges. When you drill down a little bit more, it bumps up to about 34% for community colleges. And I said, oh, okay, this is really interesting. So it caught my attention. At that same conference, the next day, they had another luncheon session, but with more college presidents. There were about six of them. All of them were college presidents. And in that particular luncheon, I noticed that out of all of them that were up there on the stage, there was only one.
Mm.
So I scratched my head like, oh, this is really interesting to me that we're here for this particular purpose. And I'm wondering, what representation is really important, right? Representation inspires people. It gives them a goal, right? It gives them a North Star when maybe someone around your immediate area, you don't see it because of the circumstances of where you were raised and so forth. I get it. So that kind of lit a fire under me. And I thought that at that time, prior to that conference, I really wasn't thinking about getting a doctorate. I was fine with my MBA. I was happy with it. I was doing consulting work, working in higher education, but it just sparked something differently. So then what I ended up doing is what I ended up enrolling. I ended up leaving my job full time. I was always consulting part time. I
Mm.
said, this is important to me. I want to focus on my studies. And yet I still want to figure out why is this important? So after the research was all done, I defended the dissertation. There were 10 college presidents that were all BIPOC across the United States that I interviewed. And through those interviews, one of the questions that I asked was two of them that really jumped out to me, even though I asked a few questions. But the first one was about authenticity. I
Mm.
asked, tell me about authenticity in your role. And it was really interesting that only two of the 10 that I interviewed had like definitive, yes, I can be myself. The other eight, they all had conditional yeses, meaning yes, but, yes, and yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's political, fill in the blank. That scratched my head a little bit. So I thought I've always done strategic planning. I've always done professional development in my previous roles as leadership and as a consultant. And I
Mm.
still am doing that. But I think that just going to that conference, getting my dissertation, finding out the
Mm.
results, I thought I really want to become a specialist at this, but it's not the only thing I do. So it's just like, all right, strategic planning, leadership coaching, training, professional development, and very concentrated on systemic equity infrastructure, which is really important because that's what I look at it, right? Because I think some people think DEI, we're living in a world right now that DEI is demonized. But I always ask people to step back for a second, right? Because diversity, equity, inclusion, all very important. And it's intimidating to some, but for others, it's hopeful, right? It's hope. So I think that for me, I always thought DEI they're really important, but what are we getting to? And I think that sometimes organizations and us as society, we forget. I think sometimes we forget that we're walking, at least we're hoping that we all walk towards equality. And D, E, and I are tools, right? They're
Mm.
tools that get there. So it's not asking people to change. It's not asking people to say, you know what, we want you to give us something. What we're asking, and I say we because I'm a Puerto Rican, first generation college student, and so forth. So what we're asking is see us, hear us, and respect us. And with that being said, that could be a mantra that has nothing to do with DEI. That could be just a mantra of, as a leader, you want to be inclusive, you want to bring in people, right? You want to hold people up, you want to lift them up, you want to build them up. But sometimes we can't take the same approach with everybody because everybody is unique. And what we're looking at is how do we say systemically, you're acknowledging this person in front of you that might be different, that maybe you don't know about it because you weren't raised with a person that way. You don't have a family who is fill in the blank. So I think there's a lot of naiveness. And I think that the natural, when we don't know something as human beings, what we do is we tend to guard up, right? And tense up. And I think that if we haven't created the spaces to say, can we have a conversation? Can we ask questions without judgment? I think that doing that, we for many years have been creating space to say, come to the table, come to the table, come to the table, very quietly, right? Come to the table. And so we say, let's create this table. Let's work on this table of DEI. But when you think about it, if a table is wobbly, what do most people do when it's wobbly? They stick a piece of wood, they stick a piece of napkin in the leg to keep it from wobbling. But the table is still broken. So I always say when you're approaching systemic equity infrastructure is what I call it, then we need to just tear down the table and then create the table with the right people at the thought of building a table, not after you build it. So I think for me, that's where it all started. And I know that's a pretty long answer, but I wanted to give you the real story, the history behind it, right? Because there was a cause and effect to your question. You're asking, why this? And I wanted to make sure that sometimes it comes in the strangest places, the why we do what we do, right?
Mm.
I've always believed in working with people, calling in people, lifting up people, regardless of race, ethnicity, etc. But I also think that we have to acknowledge that people who are different, you can't just approach them all the same way. And I think some people feel that when they create that space of calling in and welcoming to employees or even to your peers, that's a difference of people staying at a job a long period of time or people leaving within a year or two, right? So as leaders, we have to think, why is this important? One of the major components in this whole systemic equity is to create spaces to build a pipeline
Mm.
that we can actually sustain an organization that if somebody leaves, regardless of who gets plopped into that seat, that the organization still continues. Now, that's important, but what's equally important is how are we valuing, how we are evaluating and valuing our differences. And I think that sometimes gets left by the wayside because I think most of us as human beings, we feel more comfortable with what we know as opposed to leaning into something we're not sure of, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. And incredible being able to hear really the background there and the passion and drive that you have and why you are where you are now, head out of this. So I truly appreciate giving us that insight. So I would definitely love to get into the nuts and bolts of Avant, especially for our listeners right now who could end up coming and working with you
Yeah.
on what you're doing head on. Though I know that you mentioned that as far as the core offer there, how you're generating revenue, you're doing the leadership coaching. Is that one-on-one or group? I know you're doing professional development, systemic equity solutions, training, strategic planning. Who is
Sure.
your ideal client for who you work with? And also, as I mentioned, the leadership coaching, is that one-on-one? Is that group? How is that all structured?
Sure. I'll give you the three. So I have three pillars. So the
Mhm.
three pillars are the first service is leadership coaching. Leadership coaching could be individualized or could be even teams. Because I think sometimes we think that if the head of a team gets it, then it'll trickle down. Right. And what I've seen anecdotally and in data, it says that's not the case. We have to be able to, when we're creating any kind of leadership coaching, we have to understand where we are, whether it's an individual or a team. Right. So for the leadership coaching, we do both. And we do them online, which is very obviously with when COVID came, everybody did it online. But we've been doing online long before COVID. So I think it's just a matter of being able to connect with people differently. So for the business strategies, the leadership coaching is exactly that. It's either individualized or team.
Gotcha.
Business strategies, that's very much your traditional kind of strategy, such as strategic planning, such as marketing plan, such as a program review. As an organization sitting out there thinking, you know what, we have this program, it's an amazing program, it costs a lot of money. How do we sustain it? How do we keep it open? Is it worth keeping open? And why not? If we close something, are we taking away a service that's needed? And if so, how do we take care of that if we decide that is no longer viable? So that's an example of program review, but obviously the other pieces are just as equally important. So that's like the whole business strategy. So really a strategic planning. How do I, as a leader or a manager, make sure that the lights are on and they stay on
Yeah.
at an organization and that it's sustainable over time?
Hmm.
So those are business strategies. And the business strategies are customizable because what we end up doing is we end up I have an assessment that I ask potential clients, hey, can you fill this out? And how they answer guides me in being able to best give them the best possible connection of, oh, this is what I'm recommending based on how you answered. But it's also very important when we do these strategies, especially strategic planning,
Hmm.
we have to start with leadership. And when I say leadership, yes, the managers, the C-suites, but also the board of directors, if you're in the nonprofit sector. I think sometimes we focus internally and sometimes forget that the board has a really important role as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the business strategies. And then lastly, the professional development. So we do offer, we have like things on the shelf. And what I mean by that is problem solving, for example, or leadership development, or those types of really the skill sets that are needed. Like, how do I become a professional? How do I sustain my skill set? And then how do I continuously grow that? So we have our kind of lists of different trainings and topics. And Also, say there's an organization that says we're having trouble finding leaders because people aren't applying or because the interviewing process it's clogging up and we can't find a group of leaders. So what we also do as far as this piece, the professional development, is we're able to customize leadership training academies, right? So if an organization says, you know what, we have about 6 people that we know would make good leaders, they would bring us in. We would have the assessment, and based on the assessment, we would customize the leadership training at that organization looks like this because this is what they use the most. So we do a lot of those pieces as well. But those are very important. Lastly, the other piece that I want to talk about that falls under this piece is in the process of creating a training entrepreneur network. Again,
Mm.
under this piece. And what that is, so it's at its early stages. More information is coming very soon. When I say very soon, I say within the next month. I'm looking to create a private, small networking firm of other trainers who do professional development using the principles of social network capital, right? So for me, the social network capital is it's who you know. We always know it's who you know, it's who you know, it's who you know. So social capital networking is really, let's try to lean into that as training entrepreneurs and help support each other as opposed to competing against each other as like competition. Let's create a village that we can support each other for best practices, that we can actually collaborate on some programs, that we could do research together, that we can actually do problem solving together, that there'll be a component of coaching, right? So there'll be a component of coaching that if somebody who, because oftentimes the training entrepreneurs are by themselves, and
Mhm.
sometimes by themselves, I can attest to this. Sometimes by yourself, you get caught up in your own head. Sometimes you just want to bounce off of things, right? Bounce things off of somebody else. So even that piece will have 6 to 8 seats that if people who are training entrepreneurs, once a month we can get together, safe, brave space, everything that's said there stays there, but it really is again about building each other.
Mm.
So to create a village or a community of standards of best practice. So that's coming. There's more information coming. And then the other piece, because social capital networking is so important and it really sits under the umbrella of social justice and to me, responsibility. When people join, because it's going to be a paid networking piece, when people join each year, the members who are members, we're actually going to decide because a portion of the proceeds are going to be used for scholarships. Again, I want to give back to the community. So it's not us just getting together to help each other out internally as a village, as I call it, but
Yeah.
it's also saying, you know what, let's be responsible and let's give someone else a chance that might have given us a chance, that maybe we receive scholarships and we understand the importance of that value. So that's called the Training Entrepreneur Network that's coming really soon. So I just want to mention it. It's almost ready to launch, which is I'm really excited. And then lastly, the last piece I'm about to ready to launch is I have this thing. It started as a project in school called Conversation Cafe. And
Mm.
initially it started in the concept for my grade was I want to create a podcast where people can come together and just talk about all things DEI, right? Just the two of us, nobody else is listening, and have real conversations, not polished conversations. Because sometimes we get so caught up in polish that we're losing sight of why are we talking about this? So that's actually coming. I know I have one episode out there that I tested, threw it out there, but it was just to try it. But I'm
Mm.
excited that is also going to be rolled out in about less than 3 months, that it'll come out and there'll be regular episodes, right? Just once a month, we're going to start. If it picks up, then maybe twice a month. So I'm excited about that piece. And that's these two, the Training Entrepreneur Network and the Conversation Cafe, they're new, but they're connected, right? Because it really is about creating space for other people who have ideas, who actually want to connect with other people, like-minded people, and create the space of best practice for industries across, not just one industry. It's not just healthcare. It's not just education. It's all. So regardless of your industry, if we have a village, whether it's through the networking, whether it's through listening and learning on the podcast, or whether it's through these services, the leadership coaching, the business strategies, and the professional development, there really is something for individuals out there that are seeking. And some may say, wow, that's a lot. I said, it's a lot, but it's connected, right? Because
Yes.
everything falls under these 3 umbrellas. And that to me is who we are at our core and our practice. Have an amazing team with a lot of experience, educators, non-educators, people. Again, for me, it's not about the degree, it's about experience. And I think for me, we don't pay enough attention to the lived experience that informs us how we create, operate, and sustain business long term. So that's what I like to lean on.
Incredible. Such a wide variety there, but unique and detailed for what you're providing head out of those. So clear as day why you're doing so well and why the passion is really just bleeding through the conversation. It's incredible to have you on the show head out of those. So talk to us with everything that you are providing. What's working best for you right now as far as acquisition? How are you getting new clients in the door consistently, whether that's referrals from past successes, Gerardo, or ads that you're running that are working well, social media, organic outreach? What does that look like for acquisition for you right now?
Yeah. So when I first started, even though I didn't realize it, it was really through organic
Yeah,
connection, right? That's why I said the social capital network is really important to me because
absolutely.
I was doing it in the middle of it and not even knowing what I was doing.
Right.
Meaning I didn't know it was the terminology for it. I just thought, oh, I like working with people. I like connecting with people. I like telling people this is what I like to do, not as a bragging point, not as a I'm better than point. It's this is what I love to do. What do you love to do? This is how we create connections that you remember as opposed to having conversations that are like one and done, right? So I think for me, that's really important. So most of my business up to this point until last year, up until this point, was really much word of mouth. I would have a good customer and they would refer me, or someone who knows someone. It was always through my connections, but that's not a viable long-term plan. So that's why I just recently did a strategic plan, 3 years, and that's going to help me incorporate this and keep this as again longevity long term, right? So most of where I started was a very organic process through social capital networking. That's why I want to do something like that makes sense to me. That my experience plus my research all said there's nothing out there that deliberately and intentionally says, let's get together, let's hold each other up. Let's make it more than just meeting a social once a month. Let's really help each other be the best training entrepreneurs and how to run our businesses, how to sustain our businesses, how to connect our businesses. And again, from an organic piece, but with strategy. I've always been a strategist, love all kinds of strategies.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like to the core. So as far as the pieces that, and when I said until last year, for the first time since I've been consulting, I did a website, right? It's only been since September last year and it's work in progress. But through creating the website, that started generating a couple of leads there. And I never had a website because I've always had the connections. So I think to me, even that was a lesson learned because I didn't think, oh, I don't need a website because I have all these connections. But we quickly learned it's not
Yes.
sustainable long term. So I think that's an important piece that helped me get to where I'm at today.
Exactly. And the thing there, I think, is that you have that scale mindset, right? You want to keep growing, keep building. So down the line, get some ads going and keep
Correct.
on building, get the pipeline going. As far as the sales process, Gerardo, though, are you a solopreneur right now with this? As far as the sales, the marketing, do you have a sales team, marketing team? What does that look like?
Me?
This is it. The
No, no,
Gerardo
no.
show.
No, the concept, right? The concept is me, myself, and I, but not really. But then I also have this is the beauty behind networking, right? The social capital I'm talking about. So I had a former student, because I also teach at a college level. I had a former student graduated 2 years ago, I want to say. And when students graduate, some want to keep in contact. And like I said, I like keeping in contact. Sure, okay, why not? I don't want nothing. I don't need nothing. We can keep in contact. And I remember this particular student, how she was able to produce information in a way that I thought that person has a skill set that I do not have, or it's limited. She could do it in 10 minutes. It could take me an hour, right? Because she does it. So I was able to reach out to her to bring her along to say,
Very
all
cool.
right, or invite her, not bring along, invite her in, right? I called her in. She said yes. And that's when the thought of a website versus the launching of a website took place over like a couple months of her and I talking, conceptualizing what's the message? Like, how do I want people to feel when they come to the website and when they leave the website? And then they come back to the website. That's the ideal. So for me, the marketing piece really has been organic. I have an amazing person that's helping me through the social media platform because I've never used them in the way that I should, where she does on any given day, right? So it was just a matter of finding the right match. So I can teach her about business and she can actually help me promote the business and I can actually be a mentor to her. And she's a mentor to me too. I think mentorship is both ways. It's not one way. So I've been really excited working with her. So that's been a lot of fun as well.
I love it. So with that, clear as day, you really have that growth mindset, wanting to scale, wanting to get this out and work with so many people to change their lives and really bring their businesses to that next level with what you're providing. So I want to take us into the lightning round here, head out of the because it's been incredible having you on. A couple questions for you on this end. First thing that comes to mind, the first one's going to be on the bottleneck side of things, whether that be lead generation, converting those clients, the fulfillment side being that you're pretty much doing a lot on your own. What does that look like for a bottleneck for you?
Yeah, I think it's just the bottleneck is time
Yeah.
for me. And it's, I like to understand things just so I can understand them. But I also know my limits. And I also know that for me, what I'm good at, I lean into. What I don't know, I'm curious enough to learn about it and then learn enough about it so that I can find someone that I know how to assess whether that person is good at something or not that I don't know. So I really try the bottleneck piece for me is sometimes that takes a little bit of time, right? Because in between this thing called life, running a business, right? And then this thing called life, we want to be able to understand in order for us to have a growth mindset, to your point. For me, it's also very important before I bring in someone to ask that question. That bottleneck sometimes can take time because
Mm,
I want to understand it. I don't need to understand it all. I need to understand enough. I
yes.
need to understand enough to ask the questions so that, and then again, I can teach a person how to run a business. I can teach a person how to teach. I can teach a person how to facilitate. Now, I'm also open to I don't know it all, and I would love for people to teach me because I'm a student at heart, and I've always will be a student to the day I die. So it's just it's a natural, very natural progression of learning, and that could sometimes cause a bottleneck, but it's one that I don't mind today. Not that I'm saying it's going to be that way long term, because it's not. But for today, I'm okay with it because I'm still on the learning curve of how do I make sure that I'm understanding what quality is of something I'm not familiar with? I got to learn. And then I learn enough. And then I ask the right questions. And then based on the responses, I know whether somebody is on it or not. I
Yeah.
hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. So I got two more questions for you here, head out though, before we wrap up the show.
Sure.
And this next one here is going to be as far as your vision, right? What are your top priorities for the rest of the year here, head out though, for that growth, for the scale of Avant Consulting? What are you really locked in on for the rest of the year?
Sure. And honestly, for me, for this year, there's a couple of things. The two primary ones are the ones that I already mentioned, right?
Yep.
So the Training Entrepreneur Network is very important to me because it's not just a business, it's not just networking. It really is networking with purpose. And I was always in that headspace and that heart space, you know what I'm saying? As far as my career. So I want to be able to, again, make the impact impression bigger than me because it's never about me. It's about who are we serving and why are we serving? The service, the commitment to serve is something that has been instilled in me my whole entire life. And I think as successful as I am or can be, I always remember that at the beginning, I was a project kid with two parents who didn't finish school, with seven other siblings that odds were not in my favor.
Mm,
So I always remember the importance of community. So to me, that the training entrepreneur networking is something that's going to help create and really continue that piece, right? On a different level that I haven't tried before. As a
mm,
matter of fact, not many people have that kind of model either. That we're getting together, we're building each other up, we're really honestly giving each other mentoring, sponsoring, and we're donating back through scholarship. I don't
mm,
think there's many places that do that
mm.
for this. So that to me is one of the priority. And then the other piece is the podcast. I think it's a different way to your point of reaching people differently. And there's going to be some growing pains, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
As long as I have a team around me that knows it better than I do, because again, I'm a student. So to me, those two things are the most important things for me this year. And of course, everything else that is going on, that's just business as usual.
Mm,
But this here are very important. And one of the things that I'm also the lastly, I'm going to give you a third bonus carrot.
yeah.
The last thing that I want to do is I want to start, I've been writing a lot the last year, And through that, I've created a couple of workbooks that I want to self-publish. For example, one of them is going to be about employee resource groups. Employee resource groups are very important for organizations. And unfortunately, employee resource groups fail
Mm,
because they don't have the infrastructure. Like people say, let's get together, let's do something, let's honor this population. But there's no infrastructure. So the workbook, and then what I mean by infrastructure is, are the leaders involved? Are the leaders a sponsor? Are they coming, someone coming to a meeting? Do they understand the importance? The leaders, never mind the employees. Because it's the leaders, we're going to say, oh, that my employee can go to that ERG and I'll cover for them. As opposed to, I don't like it, I don't appreciate it, so no, you can't go. So
mm,
that's why this workbook really looks at how do you create effective employee resource groups from starting with the leader and then going out. So that's different that I've seen because I've seen too many of them fail because they didn't start off with what are we doing? Who's sponsoring us? So the workbook goes into those pieces. The workbook goes into each ERG should have at least two projects they should work on or be sponsoring, as opposed to only getting together to honor. Yeah, that's great. But what else? So this workbook helps with that. So that's that piece. And then the last piece, as far as the publishing piece, is I wanted to create another workbook, which again, they're both about to launch, one in September and one in October. The other one is hiring, like recruiting, hiring, and onboarding.
mm.
Because gone are the days of your traditional recruiting. Today, recruiting is very different than it was 5 years ago. And I'm hearing that from time and time again from many HR professionals, people really overseeing that they're having a hard time finding people. They're having a hard time keeping people. And I'm thinking, do you have a universal process? Meaning, is the organization, do they have a process that everybody knows and understands and still leaves room for each division and each manager to ask their question that's specific to their division, to that job? And what I find is that is also lacking. So that's why these two workbooks are really let people, if they want to buy them, they can. If they want to learn more, then they can reach out to us because then we can come in and help. So it really is a workbook self-paced. But if they need more than that workbook, we're also going to be here. So that's coming in the fall.
Love it. I love it. And I mean, with so much in the hopper, clear as day, that all systems are pushing for
Yeah.
success here. Head out of those. So to finish us off, would love to hear on this front from you. What is a piece of advice, Head out of that you can give to our listeners tuning in right now? Just heard your story, everything you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to have some people reaching out after listening to the episode. What can you offer our listeners on some advice before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate that. I think for me, the biggest piece of advice is if someone wants to do this, any of what I mentioned, right? As far as consulting work, really want to be their own boss, make sure you talk to someone who's been doing it. Come with the right questions because I think that sometimes people get caught up with, oh, I can be my own boss. But I can be my own boss means I have to be my own boss. That means your HR, that means your fiscal, that means your compliance, that means your hiring. If, when you get to that point, that means, again, the marketing, the branding. So I think that sometimes people are like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is great. And all the drive in the world is awesome. But it's also understanding what am I good at? What do I need help with? Is where I always tell people if you're going to go in this path, understand what you need help with and then understand what can you give to others in return. So to me, I always say start there. What is it that I know and what is it I don't know? And then lastly, as far as advice is, sometimes you have I call it an itch, right? What I
Mhm.
mean by that is you're on your own and then say a client doesn't go through, the itch, especially when you're starting off is, oh my God, gotta go back to work for somebody else. And that's okay if that's what you have to do. Because I've done it. I've gone back and forth for years before I was like, you know what? I need to commit to this full time in order to see it to come to fruition
Mm,
full time. So my advice is understand the questions you need to ask and make sure to understand what is it the things that you think you need help with and ask. Because I think sometimes we get in our head and we don't ask out loud. If we
mm.
don't ask out loud, how are people going to know that A, that, oh my God, there's a connection there that we can work together,
Right.
and B, there's something that we can do beyond just working together. So to
Right.
me is be straightforward, let people know what you love, let people know that, hey, I love this, But what is that? Because you'll be surprised how many people would say, I want to help you. They don't say that unless you ask for it. So that's my advice.
Love it. I love it. With that right there, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. Gerardo, I can't thank you enough, man. Coming on the show, sharing your incredible journey and your insights with us. And as I mentioned, clear as day with the passion that you have, the intelligence, why you're seeing success and why you will continue to see success. So truly would love to have you back on the show, maybe a year from now, get a follow up, see how things are going and how all those goals are being accomplished and conquered. But again, a pleasure to have you on the show today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, which I know so many of you have, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also check out Avant Consulting at avantcandt.com to learn more about their leadership and DEI solutions, including the Training Entrepreneur Network. And follow Gerardo on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Gerardo Gauthier-Zayas. For more resources and insights, visit closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you on the next one.